I was walking with a friend along the northern edge of Milton Keynes, the city in which I live. It's a new city, just over 50 years old, entering its middle age in human terms. Known for its many roundabouts and famous concrete cows, but as we walked up a small rise, we turned and looked back. 250,000 people live within the city, but little of their presence can be seen. Only a few of the taller buildings give a hint of the human city with its sprawling suburban estates amongst a grid of fast-flowing traffic. The rest is hidden amongst a city of trees. 1 million of them planted since the human city started to be raised up. Now we think of the Earth as a human planet, and yet this look back reminds us that it's truly a planet of the trees. There are 8 billion people alive on the Earth today, living among 300 trillion trees, 400 for every person on Earth. Living creatures that we too often take for granted, useful for our buildings, our homes and our fences, and providing fuel for heating and cooking, or that bit of greenery and shade in our urban environments. Yet unaware, we are beholden to them for the part that they play in sustaining the Earth as a place where life may flourish. A truly global community connected to the material of the Earth, the water, the soil, the air, even to one another in ways that science is slowly revealing. My name's Dave Gregory. I'm a church minister with a background in and passion for God's gift of science. And in this series, we want to reawaken you to the wondrous world that surrounds us. Wonder that science reveals in ways that perhaps no generation before has seen. A richly diverse world, connected together, each playing its part. We want to help you look in a fresh way at this world which is a gift to us, giving us life, and in which our life is woven perhaps more than we know, even entwined with the playfulness and the being of God. So come and join the journey, looking at our world and perhaps beyond it. From orbit, astronauts can see some of the signs of our civilization with their eyes alone. Major cities, roads, dams, and at night artificial lights shining like stars in the blackness make them even more visible. But huge parts of the continents are still dark spaces that are the vast forests that straddle around the equator. Ancient communities existing long before the vast structures of human imagination, ingenuity and engineering came to be. It can take a long time for a tree to come to maturity. At 50 years, although taller than most of the buildings among the trees of Milton Keynes, many of them are still mere youngsters. It can take 100 years for a beech tree to reach adulthood, 200 years for an oak. Slow growing, their lifespans can make our lives seem like a moment. In North America, some spruce trees have been dated to be 4,000 years old, contemporaries with the Egyptian pyramids. Others are older still. The roots of a pine tree in Sweden have been dated to over 9,000 years old, more ancient than the earliest cities. And while modern humans have been around for 200,000 years, trees have existed on Earth for 2,000 times longer. The first trees in the fossil record, now long extinct, arose 400 million years ago, long before the age of the dinosaurs. Later came tree ferns, living fossils still found in the forests of Australasia. And halfway from the time of the first trees to the present day, you might find dinosaurs walking and munching their way through conifer forests. Then as they began to decline, flowering hardwood trees that are familiar to us today, such as oak, willows and laurels, appeared. Through these long ages, trees have been creation's engineers and miners, soil and atmospheric chemists, Even nature's mathematicians, roots dig deep into the soil, drawing upon minerals and water to sustain their lives. Trees and leaf fall accumulates over the centuries, nurturing the bacteria, fungi and insects that live within the soil, as well as capturing carbon from the air. Trunks and branches rise into the sky, their shapes determined by mathematical fractal patterns, repeating from the first splitting of branches from their trunks to their very ends. Shapes that enable trees to reach tens, even 100 meters into the sky. Shapes that resist the pull of gravity and spread the forces of the wind through the tree structures, allowing them to withstand even the strongest gales. Trees are renewable energy machines, drawing in carbon dioxide using the green chlorophyll in their leaves. They use sunlight and water to turn this greenhouse gas into energy-bearing sugars stored in the outer layers of their trunks, the cambium, just under the bark and within their roots. While humans, along with animals, need a pump, the heart, to circulate life-giving blood around their bodies against the pull of gravity, trees use only the properties of water, its stickability and ability to transform from liquid to gas at low temperatures. As water molecules evaporate through the microscopic pores in their leaves, the stomata, other molecules are pulled by electrical forces between the water molecules along the xylem, long thin cells stacked on top of each other, the equivalent of our blood vessels, turning trees into fountains of water in the sky. And along with water, terpenes, organic chemicals released by the trees, form cloud condensation nuclei, microscopic particles that allow water to condense into droplets that form clouds and rain. We can feel dwarfed by the size of trees towering above us, dwarfed too by the longevity of their history and individual lives, perhaps too by the wonder that science reveals about their achievements and abilities. City builders and world shapers long before we began to move and live among them. Our planet, just as human communities, are playfully shaped by history, culture, climate, and so the cities of the trees play with shape and form and lifestyles. Slowly through ages, trees have been creation's experimenters, playfully responding to new environments and shifts in the Earth's climate, testing out innovative ideas that allow their lives and those of other creatures to flourish, even in the harshest climates. But such playful experimenting does not lead to ideal solutions, for in play you often need to take risks if you want to win. Playing the game of life, Christmas trees, members of the spruce family, grow tall and straight. They're often found in colder climates, their branches growing straight out in summer, and then in the winter snowfall bends them down, pushing them closer together, giving them the strength to bear the added weight of the snow. Looking from above, you see less tree and more ground, so less snow accumulates on them. But there's a risk in playing this game. But when winter storms arrive, the winds are unable to flow through the branches, pushing the trees harder, sometimes leading to disaster as it crashes to the ground. They gain security by huddling closer together, bearing the load of the wind for one another. But they can be thirsty, competing for a limited supply of water as the needles act like an umbrella diverting the water away from the roots, although neighbouring trees might benefit from the splashes. Deciduous trees, well, they play by different rules. Their branches turn towards the sky, their leaves catching water which drip onto the twigs, down to the branches and onto the trunks, streaming down the bark to the roots where it's stored in the soil, a reserve against future drought. And like the nutritional drinks that athletes use to restore their body, this water's laced with nutrients because blue-green algae within the mosses that colonise the nooks and crannies of the trunks and the bark. They fix nitrogen from the atmosphere, which rain then brings down to the roots. Often growing in places with longer summer days, deciduous trees lose their leaves in autumn. As green chlorophyll is broken down, the chemicals are stored, the rich, vivid autumn colours are revealed, showing the playful chemistry lab that leaves truly are. Lingering for longer are carotenoids, chemicals that give us the orange and the yellow of carrots, which also play a part in photosynthesis, teasing out life from the dwindling light of the autumn sun. Then anthocyanins, from the breaking down of sugars, they turn the leaves red and purple, while less spectacularly, tannins, familiar to those of us who drink tea as that bitter taste as you take a sip, and which help protect the tree from attack by bacteria and insects, well, they turn the leaves brown. In the spring, as the days lengthen, the trees must rely on its reserves of sugar stored from the previous year to regrow its life support system. It's risky if its energy reserves are low due to poor growing conditions the previous year, or they've suffered from attack by disease and insects. Conifers choose to play the game of life differently, tending towards the higher latitudes where the summer days are shorter. They keep most of their needles in winter. Oily substances, natural antifreeze, protect them through the cold winter months. And as spring arrives and the days lengthen, there's no time wasted growing new leaves. Photosynthesis starts up again quickly, allowing replacement needles to be grown swiftly and stores to be laid down for the long, dark winter months. Trees play the game of life at a slower pace and are seemingly more static than our own rapidly changing game. But it's play that is just as complex as that within our own bodies and lives within our cities. Playfulness different from our own, yet which our science allows us a glimpse of. Sustaining their cities beyond our remembering and imagining, long beyond the time when many of our cities will be forgotten. Towns and cities are more than we can see. Walking around, our eyes are drawn to the buildings that can display the wondrous playfulness of architects, planners, builders. Connected by roads and pavements, perhaps in our travelling we give little thought to the connections that lie beneath our feet. Pipes and cables that connect us to vital services. Water that flows at the turning on of a tap, or electricity that lights and powers our homes at the flip of a switch. Invisible too is the electrical energy throbbing through the air to mobile phones, TVs and our radios. While walking through the cities of the trees, our sight is drawn to the magnificence of their size and the variety of their shape of tree and leaf. Yet we can miss the connections under the earth that are vital to sustaining this community, just as our own. Roots dig deep into the soil, extracting water and vital nutrients. They're helped by a mesh of fungal fibres, mycelium, living in a symbiotic relationship with the trees. The fungal network increases the reach of the tree's root systems, helping the trees to extract nitrogen, phosphorus and other elements from the soil. But as with the utilities in our cities that we rely on, this support service comes at a cost. Living in the dark soil and without an ability to photosynthesize, the mycelium demands up to a third of the sugars that a tree produces to sustain its own life. Now, some scientists describe the mycelium mesh as an internet of the forest, or playfully a wood wide web. It keeps the trees connected. Saplings growing in the shade of their parent tree suffer from a shortage of light that slows their growth. Larger trees steal most of that light, slowing the growth of these eager youngsters, yet allowing them to build strong, dense wood that will provide a good foundation when the time comes for them to reach for the sun, as the larger trees are felled by disease, old age, or a storm blowing through the forest. It's a tough way to bring up your offspring, but they're not abandoned. For through the mycelium network come sugars and water from their elders, sustaining and keeping alive their potential for the future. A sharing that bridges even the difference between different species of trees, for the network can connect trees of different types together, allowing a sharing of resources as each responds in their own way to changes in temperature and rainfall, sustaining the whole community of the city. And above the soil too, there are connections that our own senses are unaware of. When attacked by disease or insects, trees respond, releasing chemicals which, blown by the wind, alert other trees around them to danger, giving them time to deploy countermeasures, such as toxins that make their leaves unpalatable to insect attackers. Connections that sustain the life and health of the forest. But these chemical connections go further and wider out to the whole globe. For depending upon carbon dioxide, the cities of the trees are connected to the global carbon cycle, which helps sustain the whole community of life around the whole planet. Over centuries, millennia and beyond, trees draw down carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, helping to maintain the life-sustaining climate of the Earth. And when they die, left to decay in the forest floor, most of its carbon is slowly recycled by fungi and insects and bacteria, buried gradually deeper and deeper within the soil, with the potential over thousands of millions of years to be locked away as coal. Coal like that formed from the forests of the Carboniferous age 300 million years ago, with which we have powered our human cities over the past few hundred years. As ever, within the city of the trees, this is a slow game. Depending upon their lifespan, a tree might capture between 5 and 20 tons of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere over 30, 40 or 100 years or more. Yet within the fossil fuel powered frantic lives of our human cities, we might release a similar amount into the air in a single year. 8 billion people, disturbing the balance of carbon in the atmosphere, which 300 trillion trees have helped to sustain throughout human history and deeper into the past. Contributing to the warming of the earth as greenhouse gases rise to higher and higher levels, disturbing our cities, disturbing the cities of the trees, which as science and the pictures of orbiting satellites reveal, we and the whole community of creation on this planet of trees depend. We're not always good at learning from history, nor at times listening to our elders, but perhaps we should listen to the long-lived, slow voices of the trees if we are to hope to sustain our cities as long as theirs. The creation story of the Bible begins with a city of trees, Eden, a garden where God causes trees of all kinds to grow. And it ends with a city, the New Jerusalem, which is full of trees, the tree of life, whose leaves are for the healing of the nations. Between the two, the human story is woven. Bookends that speak of the long history of trees upon the earth, of our relationship with them, of their role in sustaining the earth to be a place able to bear life. The trees of Eden are described as being of all kinds, beautiful to behold, pleasing to the eye, Perhaps wondrous too. As we walk through woods and forests, are we drawn to look up? Stretching our arms upward, we reach up maybe a few meters, and yet around us, the twig tips of the long bodies of beech and oak comfortably stretch 30, 40 meters above the earth. Majestic but small compared to the true Gothic cathedral of trees, sequoia, reaching up 3 times as tall. Pleasing to see, yet humbling, even a little fearful. Growing over centuries, even millennia of uninterrupted sun-directed praise. Trees which, with the whole of creation, sing for joy before the Lord. An ancient song, rolling around the earth day after day after day. Greater than the joy of a stadium conference or the most vibrant worship that we can offer. Maybe it makes you feel a bit small, quite temporary, bringing awareness of our fragility and dependency upon others in the community of creation and with God. Leading us to humility fostered beyond their majestic grandeur by God's gift of science that tells us of their skills as engineers, mathematicians, soil, water and atmospheric chemists, green energy suppliers for themselves as well as the whole forest community. What might the trees be telling us about our use of science in shaping our cities and worlds? Jesus told a story about the trees of planting a mustard seed, the smallest of seed that grows to become a tree that all the birds of the air make their nests in its branches. And this is how God is at work, he says. The city of trees, in their playful mixture of shape and size, form and colour, long easily seen with our eyes, along with their secrets that science now reveals to us, are host to an equally playful community of life. As you walk below the foundations of this high-rise living, do you look up, watching out for the squirrels scampering up and down the vertical highways of the trees, or the forest aviators as they expertly navigate the air within the branchy canopy? If you have time, you might try and count how many different types of ants and beetles, spiders and snails can be found going about their daily business on each high-rise trunk. You could stay for a long time. If you're a fancier of fungi, lichen and moss, that's more time still. And to complete the count, in the cloud forests of more tropical climes, you'd have to climb to the treetops. And there you'd find another forest above your heads as the ephonites, the aptly named air plants and the ferns colonise the canopy far, far above the forest floor. Perhaps the trees have something to teach us here. They, like us, are creatures that seek the strength of community, nurturing their young, sharing resources with their own kinds and others. The strength of a tree is neither in its rootstock or its woody trunk. It's in the forest. A forest quietly nudges its own environment, making life better for its community bit by bit. You see, trees are in it for the long term. It can take several hundred years for a forest to mature, the trees along with the soil on which they depend. We too desire to create our environment, yet our shaping of the world is more impatient than that of the trees, and perhaps not as generous. Through long ages we've cleared the forest with stone axe or power tools, making space for farms, turning vibrant, diverse ecosystems into single species communities. Pasture for cattle or palm tree plantations to supply the needs of our modern living. Like ripping down a playful variety of houses in a picturesque village built across the generations and replacing it with a suburban sprawl of identical homes. More convenient for living perhaps, but you'll never find those images gracing a greetings card or a calendar. As the city of trees is replaced by our human cities, the balance that has kept the climate stable through human history is disturbed. We're slow to learn the lessons of the trees, of the vast reserves of natural energy that might power our lives. Technology that our science and technical ingenuity can mimic drawing energy from the sun. Yet we choose to continue to burn coal and the remains of long buried trees together with those we chop down today, adding warming carbon dioxide to the air and reducing the ability of the earth to moderate the levels of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. As forests are replaced by pasture, the ability of the land to absorb carbon is reduced. The warming, shifting climate disturbs the environment in which the trees have adapted through long ages. Only able to move slowly, as fast as the wind or animals and insects can spread their seeds, perhaps less than a kilometre a year. With their long journey to adulthood, it leaves them weaker, prone to disease and new pests, more susceptible to the growing extremes of weather in a warmer climate. The Bible story begins and ends with a tree, the tree of life, whose leaves are for the healing of the nations. In our age of climate change and environmental loss, what might we learn from the trees that have sustained the life of the earth through long, long ages? How might we live with God to bring healing to the nations of the world, nations of people, nations of trees, and others in the wondrous, playful creation with which we are entwined and for whom God cares?